Hello and welcome to Appy Hour. This is our chance to share what we've learned during this pandemic teaching time and take those tips and tricks and share it with our friends and faculty friends and colleagues and think about those things that have really worked for us and kind of spread that knowledge out amongst the community. Today we have Dr. Joe Mullins, who is everything, interim dean of McCamish School of Business and Sports Studies and program director for the MBA. Is that correct?
No, not the MBA. The MSOL.
Right, the Masters in Sports Leadership. And Joe is going to talk about podcasting in Anchorfm today. So Joe, take it away.
Awesome. So let me try to share this screen and make sure that you guys can see this.
We are seeing your PowerPoint.
Beautiful. Okay. All right, awesome. So
actually what we're seeing is your notes screen.
See, that's what the issue is. I don't know how to change it.
Are there two screens you can choose to share when you share your? Yeah, try share again and see if there's another desktop screen that you can share. There we go.
Better? Beautiful. Okay. There you go. That's why you're a technological wizard. All right. So I'm going to talk about Anchor today. So a little bit of the background to how this kind of happened. I really like podcasts. I don't have a lot of time sometimes to be able to sit down and read like I would like to. And so I can listen to it in the car. And I don't really remember exactly how I stumbled upon this, but I just found it a couple of years ago and started playing around with it. And I was like, man, this is really easy. I think I can use this in a classroom. And I was teaching a sport media class at the time. And I had a couple of students that were not good. That's the best I could say about them. And they wouldn't do anything. So we get to this podcasting area and it completely changes the whole entire class for them. Like they just lit up. And that's all they wanted to do going forward. And they were treating it like it was a job. I mean, they were serious about it. And so since then, I've started using it pretty much in about everything I teach from time to time. And so what I'm going to do is go through just a real quick presentation, kind of talking about podcasting in general, talking about some tips in the classrooms and things I've learned. And then I'll actually pull the app up because it's so simple to use. It's crazy simple. So we'll look at Anchor. I'll talk about podcasting. We'll look at some ways to use it in the classroom, some tips, and then we'll actually learn to use it. So Anchor is a website and an app. That's what's kind of cool about it is you can do it. I'm going to show you the version that's the web version today, but you can get it through the App Store, through Apple and Google, and it works the exact same way on a phone. So you can actually create a podcast, edit it, and distribute it all from a phone. You don't have to have a microphone or anything. If you do have a microphone, it makes it a little bit cleaner and a little bit easier. But it is, barring like trying to learn how to use like an Adobe Audition or something like that to do a professional type of stuff. This is the simplest thing that I've ever seen. So just some, I guess, little quick numbers about podcasts. I don't know how many people listen to them. I listen to them all the time. These are just some stats. Apple has 1 billion subscriptions to their podcast store. The 12 to 34 year age range, which is what we're dealing with, I think is why it's so popular with them and they enjoy it so much. And it's something that they can listen to and do on their phone, which they're already wanting to mess with all the time anyway. And so it kind of works really well for our group of students. So some reasons to use it in the classroom. These aren't in any particular order, but it's a change up. Like students get tired of always writing papers and making presentations. They really do. I mean, I get tired of reading them. And so this is a great way to accomplish some things you want to accomplish in the classroom without, it can still be really good. It's still challenging. They can still do research. They're just putting it out in a different format. And so it fits really well for those students who maybe sometimes struggle to get their words out in writing, and they're still trying to learn that skill, even in college. They seem to take to this really, really well. Another thing is it's a useful skill. So one of the things I try to accomplish in every class I teach is I try to tell them that, look, we're going to do some things that are going to be lines on the resume. And that's what I continually tell them. So I'm always looking for some kind of program technology for them to learn. So it's because you just never know, and they never know what's going to become useful for them when they go out to look for a job. You know, you never know what's important to an employer. And it just improves creativity, which is every time I look now at what skills employers are wanting or looking for, creativity is up there every single time on one of those lists now. So this is a good way. So some ways to look at it. So there's a couple of ways to think about this. You can look at it from like a teacher-centered focus or student-centered focus. So from a teacher-centered, obviously you could record your lectures and make them into podcasts. I don't do this very often. Occasionally I'll do it if I know I'm going to be out, or during advising week when things are going to be crazy and I know that I'm going to miss classes, I will do that. Sometimes I will go, you can find a podcast, honestly, on everything that you could ever want to tell a student. And so a lot of times I will assign podcasts as just part of the curriculum. But what I really like is the student-centered part of it. I will have them create podcasts for assignments. And I've done this at the undergraduate and the graduate level. And my favorite way to do it now is we'll go 2 or 3, 4 weeks where we're covering a lot of material. And I'll just decide, hey, I'm gonna make a podcast assignment, and I will list out everything that we have talked about over those last couple of weeks. And I'll say, look, you can pick anything that's broadly related to a topic that we've talked about. I want you to do the research for yourself. I want you to create a podcast. I'll tell them how long I want it to be. I'll tell them what I expect as far as, the quality of it. And then I turn them loose and let them go. And sometimes they'll do it by themselves. Sometimes I'll let them work with a partner, and they will oftentimes produce things that are really, really interesting. You can tell they get into it more once they learn how to cite something without it having to be on paper, okay, and how to reference it in a podcast. They really get into it, and it's exciting for them. Another thing that I've played around with that I'm going to do more is creating a class podcast, where it's something where I set up basically an account for the entire class, and they're responsible for creating podcasts throughout the whole semester that adds to the whole class's knowledge, so they can listen to each other and see what everybody's doing. And then kind of the last thing before we get into how to use it, are just some tips. Think about the length that you make these things, because whatever you make them, you've got to listen to them. It's kind of like what you assign, you've got to grade. And I learned this the hard way, and it can get time consuming. Thankfully, you can listen to it in your car, which makes it a little bit easier. Let them be creative. Like, don't put constraints on them. It's amazing what some kids will come up with when you give them the opportunity to. Let them work in groups sometimes. A lot of the podcasts that they listen to are done in pairs, so they're used to that format of seeing people go back and forth or hearing people go back and forth. I make them do an outline. So I make them turn in like an outline that looks like what you would have as a script to do a podcast, where it references where they got their material from, what they're going to talk at certain points in that podcast. And I have the same expectations I would have if they were writing like an APA paper. Like, I expect them to give credit to who they're citing, and and they don't have an issue once they learn how to do that. And the biggest thing is let them have fun. Like it's just a different change of pace, and it's something that I have found probably of everything I do in any class, this is their favorite thing to do. Like they really, really enjoy it. And it's something pretty simple to use. So that's a little bit about just kind of some general things. So let me stop sharing this and find the actual Anchor. All right, can you guys see that? Okay.
Yes.
Beautiful. So so when you go to Anchor, whether it be the website or the app, it's going to ask you to create an account like normal. It'll give you the option to do it, I think, through Google or through Facebook, or just set up a normal account. But every time you go back to it after that, you're going to get a dashboard that looks like this. And so I very rarely ever really give directions to the students. Honestly, I kind of just see what they can do. I don't know if it's a bad thing, but I like to throw them kind of in the deep water sometime and let them figure it out a little bit and see how they do. And I've never had somebody come back to me and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. I couldn't figure it out. It's really that simple. So you're going to click new episode, and it's going to bring you to kind of this page that, and it's going to look real similar to this on the app also. So going down this list, you have a couple things. This is obviously where you record your audio. So when you click this, it's going to record it from whatever microphone you have. If it's on the app, it's just going to be a button that you click, and once you record it, it's going to archive it. So you can, I think it'll give you 30 minutes, but you can break it into multiple segments. And everything that you do that you've previously done will be stored in the library. So if you have clips from other things, you can reference those and put those into it as you go. This is pretty new, and I haven't messed with this a whole lot. Just probably recently, Anchor and Spotify have kind of, I don't know if they've merged, if somebody bought somebody, but anyway, there's this whole deal of where you can link your Spotify account to Anchor and add music from it into your podcast. It'll make you go through some steps to make sure there's nothing that's inappropriate in it, but that's a new thing. This is a pretty cool deal. You can take this and create a link and send it to somebody, and they can record a message for you, like answering questions, and it will show back up for you for audio that you could use to plug into your podcast. Okay, it's kind of like having a guest. Okay, which is really neat. And then these are transitions. Okay, they're just little annoying noises that you hear that people put in everything. So if we go to record and we start recording, it's gonna record as long as I let it record. Okay, and the one thing about the app that's a little bit different is you have to kind of mess with the buttons to make sure that you're hitting what you need to, that it's actually recording, but they don't seem to have an issue. On the website, it's super simple. So it will let it record. And once I stop it from recording, it'll kind of mess with it and process it a little while. And it will, once it gets done processing, it'll give me the opportunity to add it over to into my episode. Okay, so like if I add it now, it's over here. So now I can start creating different segments of my podcast, and I can separate it by using those transitions. Okay, and I can create music to go in the background, or I can make intros or outros. So if I go to the little kebab, as Mason calls it, it'll let me edit the audio here. Okay, if I want to shorten it, or if I want to remove it altogether, if I want to download it, I can do that. And so it'll allow me to kind of shuffle these things back and forth, move them around, and add things in and out until I get it the way that I want it. Okay, and then it'll let me preview it down at the bottom, play it, make sure it sounds good. before I actually take it and decide what I'm going to do with it. Some other things, this is kind of pulled up what it looks like for the editor. It looks like this. It's real simple. If it's something you're used to seeing with audio, it'll allow you to do a lot with it. And so what I usually tell my students is, look, the minimum I'm looking for is make sure it's professional. I'll give them the length that I want it to be. I'll tell them to add some background music. If you want to add background music, at the very least, do an intro and outro music. Some of them can't concentrate while music's playing in the background and talk, so it kind of messes with them. And then I will tell them, I'll set up Canvas where they can share the URL, and that's really all they have to do. Now, if I save this episode, it'll bring it and it'll ask me for what I want to call it, a description of it. I can, if it's part of like a season, or if I'm actually doing like a for real podcast, it'll give me all these options to set it up the way I want it. And then once I publish it, it will allow me, if I want to take it and publish it to all the major podcast type places. So it'll publish it to Apple for me. Okay, if I choose to do that. Now, I don't do that with my students. Now, some of them may do it on their own. What I do is I ask them to, when they get to this, and this is like one I did of a review of Anchor I actually did for an online teaching certificate. They'll get to this point and they can share it through Facebook, Twitter. I just ask them to copy the URL, and they just paste it into Canvas, and then it's there. Then I can go listen to it when I want to. I can grade it when I want to. And it's really simple. I listen to them a lot of times in the car on the way to work. It's hilarious, some of the stuff they come up with. I don't know that, Mason, will it let you listen? Can you guys hear something if I play a podcast on here? I think you're muted.
It depends. Are you on a Mac?
No.
I think when you click the share screen option, there should be a share system audio tick box. Let's try it and see if it.
Yeah, I was going to try to play a little bit of one.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it now. All right, let me see if I can remember what I did with it. So hopefully you can hear this. I'll play the beginning of it. So this is one that a girl did for a master's class, and it was a sport leadership class. And so they were allowed to, pretty much given kind of free reign to research what they wanted to do within some parameters. And something that, I won't play the whole thing, but something that's pretty cool that she did is she went and found some audio of prominent people in sport leadership, and she added it into the podcast, almost like she was interviewing them. Cool. So we'll see if you can hear this. You guys can tell me.
Hello, my name is Ansley Dofster, and welcome to my first ever podcast. First, let me start off with a little introduction of myself. I'm currently serving as a graduate assistant for the athletic department at Reinhardt University and getting my master's degree in sports administration and leadership. Speaking of leadership, today's podcast is focused all on leadership. We're going to start out with some basic information on leadership and then hear from a few experts and one of my favorite people, Mr. Bob Goff. So without further ado, let's get started. What is leadership? If we are being 100% honest here, one of my favorite things I learned this semester in my leadership class was the Great Man Theory. According to Prashi Johana, the Great Man Theory of leadership states that some people are born with the necessary attributes that set them apart from others, and that these traits are responsible for their assuming positions of power and authority. Given my personality is mainly an extrovert, this theory quite frankly scared me. Was I not born to lead? Do I not have what it takes to lead in today's society simply because I'm perceived as quiet? Lucky for me and the thousands of other introverts, the Great Main Theory might not actually be validated. In an article from Science Direct, Corey S. Halig discusses this theory and why it is important. He explains that the Great Main Theory of leadership is not an empirically validated theory. What value then does the theory have, and what might inspire a leader learn from it? First, you must realize that
So that kind of gives you an idea of what they can create pretty simply. Okay, and she, like I said, later on, she goes and adds some audio in where she had found some people talking about their theories on leadership and what they thought, and it was really, really good. And so I think they kind of get a kick out of feeling like they're maybe doing something that's maybe a little bit more important than probably what it really is, but they think it's kind of cool, and it allows them to, to be creative and do things maybe other than just writing a paper. And I've learned to kind of appreciate that. So that's really kind of the basics of it. I guess I can try to answer questions.
So you say it will publish a feed?
Yes.
And the feed is through Spotify.
So let me see if I can pull it up. Let me get off of hers and go to mine. Let's see if I can find it. So let's see. So if you go to down here where it talks about how to distribute it, it will allow you to distribute to all these places.
Okay. And so it's hosting the audio too?
Yes.
Is there a membership?
Not that I'm aware of.
Price point. Are there any pro options, and what would they be?
I have not. I mean, I haven't played with it, so I don't. I mean, I use it for what I use it for. So maybe there is, but it never asks you for anything.
Okay.
So I know I'll say this. I listened to a guy who does a fishing podcast of all things on Friday night. And he does it like he hosts it through like Facebook Live and through like YouTube Live. But once it's over, he takes that audio and uploads it to Anchor to publish his podcast to Apple. And so I've never been asked. I know there's some things up here about money on how to make money off of things, but I've never gone down that route. I just use it for what I have to use it for.
That's what I was going to ask, what the money thing was.
Yeah, it's. So I was playing around with it, looking at it. I've never really looked at it. It's how to get like sponsorships, like for your podcast. I'm not there yet, so, and we're sure not there yet. Maybe that's a way to raise money.
Yeah. Well, I know that Spotify has been very much trying to corner the market on premium podcasts. They recently took the Joe Rogan podcast, and they're the only place you can get the Joe Rogan podcast now is on Spotify. I kind of think they had designs on being the podcast app. So I'm wondering if this is part of their push, is to make it easier for user contributed material to get on, and then whatever even minor small holding it has, they insert a commercial here, a commercial there, if you're listening in the Spotify app.
Maybe so. I don't know. Like I said, the Spotify thing is relatively new because when we did this back in the fall for the master's class, there was no Spotify. There was none of that music stuff that was added. That's all recent. And so maybe you're right. Maybe they are trying to just push everybody else out of the market. And I mean, I've looked for a ton of different ways to do things, and this is the easiest way I've seen to create one that sounds professional without having to go like to Adobe Audition and try to figure out how to do all that stuff.
Yeah, I've done several podcasts in my years, and it's always involved somehow having a website and a blog and an RSS feed and uploading audio to that feed, and then it gets distributed by the different podcast services. And I'd never found a good solution where it would host your audio, certainly not for free, I think Anchor's had a paid, there's a couple that I looked at. Blueberry was one, and they all had paid hosting. So it's quite a find if this is actual free hosting of a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing it a while, and we've never had an issue with anything.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, they may publish them on their own, but we don't publish them as far as, to a a feed anywhere. I don't want to go down that route necessarily, but for what I use it for, it's perfect. But, somebody tech savvy like yourself can probably figure it out, ins and outs.
Do you know if there's ways to change the art while it plays? And
it will. So once you start once you do it the first time, it will ask you to kind of set all of this stuff up. Okay. It'll let you put a picture in the way you want it. Example, I had during advising, I had a class do a podcast during advising, and I had, two girls that partner up, and their art is like this little flashy picture of them two standing together. That's what the art is for their podcast. So yeah, it will allow you to do all that once you set it up.
Cool. And so when they share the link in Canvas, is it a link to Spotify or is it a link to Anchor FM?
No, it'll come to Anchor.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I pulled up for you guys, when I pulled up that one that we listened to, I took that straight out of Canvas and just copied and pasted it into that PowerPoint.
So they never actually have to publish?
No. Nope. So if you look at, if you go to episodes, you can see anything that, that's the one that I did today. This is the one I did back on 6/3. They never have to go publish. They just sit there.
They just sit. And do you know how long they'll host something like that? I mean, if it's an assignment, yeah.
I think it'll stay there a while. I don't think they care.
That's really cool.
This was back, in 6/3 when I did this one. So it's pretty neat. I need to play around with it more, I guess, to find out. I haven't had the urge to start a podcast, to start publishing, but I know where you're coming from, Mason, from your standpoint, because you're looking at it from a Siddle standpoint probably, and some of the stuff you could do with it for that. But I just use it to break up the monotony of reading papers and reading PowerPoints and giving them something to maybe have a little ownership for themselves.
Hi, Joe. Sorry, I came in on this late, but I am interested with its connection to Spotify. Cherokee County Schools blocks Spotify. I wonder with its connection to Spotify, if that association might lend itself to be blocked as well, because it looks like a great tool.
That's a great question that I don't necessarily know the answer to. When you pull up Anchor, it really doesn't, at least looking at the URL, it doesn't really look like it links necessarily to Spotify.
Right.
It just has by Spotify, so I'm assuming that they bought it. When you create the new episode, where the Spotify stuff comes in is with this music. Mm-hmm. And I haven't played around with this, but I was reading some help stuff before we went on, and it was talking about how you can't publish an episode with just music. You have to have audio talking over the top of it. It catches it if you try to publish just music. So I don't really know. I wouldn't think it would just block the website.
I would definitely have to try it. That's the quick solution to that question, but
yeah, I don't know.
I didn't know if you knew of any, maybe colleagues of mine who is somewhere in the county who's tried it. And I swear to goodness, if they don't block a news site every day, but I don't know a whole lot of people that really use it, period. That's one of the reasons I was going to try to come on here, just because I don't hear a lot of people messing with it a whole lot. And I don't see a whole lot of people really doing this type of stuff in class. So maybe it will, work. I know the whole Cherokee County blocking issue, though, from friends I have there. Yeah, we're a little infamous.
I could see the danger from their perspective of it being a little too easy for a student to publish an assignment?
Yeah.
As a minor, or
For
I
our
don't know.
district, it seems like every block comes from a new legal situation between organizations and our lawyers. So to protect student privacy, like I'm about to present on Prezi, it's not approved, not yet. It's in the I know we talked a little bit about that 3-month process, or at least 2 months getting it approved. And it's now up to just my principal to make the decision for the county. And there's not even student data involved, really. But that's the process. So I think with music sites like YouTube Music and Spotify, it's the music aspect. It's the distraction thing. So I think that's why Spotify's blocked.
Joe, I have more questions about your messaging part of it. I was really interested in that, like how students could collaborate to create the podcast together, especially when we have students who procrastinate and they send their stuff last minute. You have one student who's trying to compile all the information. Have you played around with that at all to see how user-friendly that is for students? Have they been able to figure that out pretty easily? How does that work?
So, this is the one thing that I found that they don't tend to like drag their feet on. I think it's something they actually enjoy doing. So the ones that I've had that I've had pair up and do it, I never hear anything bad from it. Like a lot of times they will just, they'll just find a quiet place, and I've had them come and ask to use my office before to do it, and so I'll leave the office door open, they'll lock it and, leave when they get done. So I haven't played around with the sending messages part a whole lot to see. It's much easier to do with just having them both in front of the computer or both in front of the phone so they can interact with each other back and forth like you would see in a regular podcast. And I think that's really what they enjoy probably the most, because a lot of the ones they hear, like the Joe Rogan Experience, things like that, they're used to hearing people getting interviewed and kind of the banter back and forth of arguing, and they get all into that. And then when you put sport into that too, they get even more passionate about it. So I haven't had that issue like I have collaborating on other things. Probably if I used it more, I would have it. But, I don't use it all the time, but I'll, use it a couple of times a class.
Because I'm wondering, like, if they can send messages to each other, like to their Anchor accounts. Is that how it works?
No. So what it is like, say what this is supposed to be used for is, say I was doing a podcast and I wanted to get, say, Mason's expertise or your expertise. And so say I emailed you a list of questions that I would like you to talk about. Mm-hmm. I can click on this and it'll create a link. And when I send it to you guys, it will, it'll look like this.
Okay.
And you can start recording, and then it will give me that audio that I can use to input into my podcast from your expertise.
Got it.
Yeah, they're mimicking what would essentially be like a call-in option. Yes. Or ask the host option.
Yes.
That's always been kind of hard to do. There was a SpeakTube, I think, solution that has been used for a while, but this looks very easy too, especially if you could. Now, is that a one-time use, or will it save multiple recordings to the same link?
Well, let's play around with it and see what it does.
All right. And it's for up to 1 minute, it looks like.
Yeah. So my guess is you could send multiple links. So it has their name. Uh-oh, what does it say? No, Reinhardt Internet.
Yeah. You're using a port they don't want you to use.
Maybe not. I don't know. In theory, that's what's supposed to happen. Okay. And it should show back up in your regular deal, and you could use it multiple times.
So your sound card may not can handle all these voice interchanges going on at one time.
Yeah, well, my computer's about the 1980 version.
That's all you need.
That's right.
And a chalkboard.
That's right.
Yeah. Can you edit those that come back then? So you can.
Yeah. So any audio you have that you can edit.
Okay.
Yeah. It brings up the
You
wave.
can trim.
Yeah. You can trim them out. Yeah. And again, we haven't played around a ton with this either because usually it's just them making their own content. The one we listened to, she was just really creative because she went and pulled some stuff from audio from YouTube and places of Kobe Bryant talking about leadership and put stuff in there. So it made it sound more professional. And usually I don't get that.
So if you were going to go to, like, say, a course produced podcast, right now, all your students are logging in individually, producing the podcast. They send you the link. Could you then download that audio and add it to an official feed?
I think so. Yeah. I think you could do it that way. I think you could do it by creating an account that you use for everybody. They can log into. I think you could do it that way. There's a bunch of ways you could do it. That's my next step to play around with.
And let's say you did want to publish different feeds. Does it allow you to designate a specific, like, let's say I wanted to manage 3 shows, or I had 2 different courses, and I wanted to manage 2 different podcast feeds. Do I need to have a separate account for each one, or can I do multiple shows with one account?
Dang, Mason, you're making me look like an idiot.
I'm sorry.
I honestly don't know. I would assume if you have multiple feeds that you're doing your own podcast, I'm sure it's going to let you go to whatever feed you want to take it to for people who have multiple podcasts going at one time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the next evolution for this for me, because I think that's really what I want to do is allow them to be able to everybody contribute throughout the 15 or 16 weeks. At some point you have to produce a podcast on a given topic and let the other ones listen to it and kind of create a class-wide one.
Yeah, and it's community outreach too, experience. Let's say you're marketing the sports administration leadership masters. You put that out there and say, these are the kinds of things we do in this program. I like that it has the potential to be very public and public facing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm still kind of, I guess, in the infancy of using it, even though I've been using it for a little while. I haven't really thought past the using it for an assignment. Haven't really thought about the potential of maybe creating a class podcast that is out there, that is published. Even though, honest to goodness, you can find a podcast on everything. It's unbelievable. And it's like, I look at it a lot like scholarly papers. Not a whole lot of people read a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
You do a whole lot of work for nobody to like to read a lot of it. But it's something that, a lot of people, it's a hobby. It's something that they do. And it's becoming, and at least in the sport industry, becoming a pretty big part of the industry now.
Yeah.
Most personalities have their own podcast. If they're not, those young ladies that you listen to present at the Convocation of Artists and Scholars, they're about to have to start to work on a podcast for that lady that they work for.
Mm-hmm.
So it's becoming a pretty big part. So that's why I push it so much, because it is a legitimate skill for them.
Absolutely.
It's like my old-fashioned wiki. I used to have students produce a wiki for a class. Now they can produce a podcast feed with all the different things that they've learned and making PSA announcements. So I like it.
Irma, that's exactly where I'm going with it, because that's what I'm going to be doing in my pedagogy courses now that I'm finally teaching pedagogy, is we're going to have a Reinhardt pedagogy wiki that is cumulative for all the students that have ever come through Reinhardt pedagogy. And I was thinking, man, we could have a topic a week type podcast for the students to produce. It'd be a nice assignment for them to put together. They'd have the audio for demonstration. Sounds cool to me.
Yeah, I think I used to do this a long time ago as at another university. We used to make PSAs in a very old-fashioned way. Mm-hmm. And then it was just too cumbersome. And now it's like, I can go back to that. I love this idea.
I would love to see what you all come up with, because it's just brings up more ideas of how to use it.
Well, and Lydia, again, we've always talked about multiple literacies. This is one of those ways that we can tap into somebody's other abilities. They may not be a particularly gifted writer or graphical artist, but man, they can carry on a conversation, and dadgummit, they're interesting to listen to.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's probably the thing I've seen is probably the neatest, is that this will get to some students that nothing else will get to. Mm-hmm. I think it's more mainstream. It's more of a cultural thing that they're used to now, and they listen to. And so when they get to do it, you see them kind of light up. That they think they are a big deal that they have made a podcast.
Yeah.
And hey, whatever excites them to make them want to learn, I'm all for it now.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much, Joe. This has sparked a lot of ideas for me. And I have recently looked into a lot of these things, and I've never seen anything this easy that will host your audio for free. So this is really, really exciting. And I hope everybody can stay tuned. At 4:00, we have Anastasia Teasley. Thank you for joining us for this Appy Hour, Anastasia. And you're going to be presenting on Prezi. Would you like to give us a quick preview?
Oh my gosh, I've got it all lined up ready for everyone to see. But yeah, is there anybody already here who uses Prezi Video? Because you might be my co-presenter today.
No,
I haven't in a long time.
Me neither.
I've used the presentation. Is that what you mean? The presentation software?
Well, it's pretty new. It's about a year old. This new.
Oh no, I haven't used the new thing. Nope.
Well, in that case, I'm actually kind of then excited to show you what I have found out, because it is new and definitely going to be a game changer in digital learning, especially if you are 100% digital or teaching an online class. I mean, it has a load of benefits, but yeah, I have not used Prezi since about 2012.
Right.
Right. And I think that's about after it kind of fell from its heyday. But yeah, so I'm excited to present what this new side of Prezi is, and it's completely different. So that's
fantastic. So
I'll leave you with a clicker.
Okay. Y'all join us at 4. Let's see what's new with Prezi. Again, we're excited to do these Appy Hours to kind of show what all we've learned. And we also want it to be a lead into our summer teaching and learning conference. Our theme for this year is Control C. What is it that we've learned because we had to for this pandemic? And what are we going to copy and continue to do even when we're done with the restrictions? So we'll have more information about that conference coming shortly. And thank you all for joining, and I hope to see you again at 4:00.